Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is the New Director Network for November. Actually, it's October. I'm jumping ahead of what month we're in. Can someone give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? You able to hear me all right, everyone? Okay, good. Thanks, Heather, for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. So welcome, everyone. We're really happy to have you with us today. We may have other folks jump on as we go along, but we're going to go ahead and get started so that we can make the most of your lunch hour. Um, we're really pleased to have you with us today. We are going to be talking today about making the most of WSSDA's annual conference, which is coming up in just 5 short weeks, amazingly enough. That makes our staff get really excited and anxious at the same time. There's a lot to do between now and then. But we're really pleased to have you here. We're going to talk a little bit about what to expect from the conference. Some of you may have been to the conference already, others may not have. So we'll give you the opportunity to learn about it and even share some things as well. So I want to start out by introducing ourselves. This is your leadership development team. Although I am no longer in the leadership development branch, I became the executive director at WSSDA in July and am really excited to be in that position after serving in 10 years in leadership development. And we do have with us Heather Curl, our director of leadership development. She's waving at you all. And then also Christine Naharo, who is our events and branch support specialist. And she does a little of everything. When you need something from WSSDA, she's often the person who provides it for you. So we're really glad to have you here today. Just a couple of notes on how to make this a webinar that works well for you. As always with these webinars, we generally ask you to just mute yourself unless you want to speak. You can have your cameras off or on. That's your choice. I see you are already exercising that choice in multiple ways, which is just great. Some of you may be eating your lunch, and that's no problem. We'll give you the opportunity at any time to type questions into the Q&A box that we'll handle as we go along or once we get to a stopping point. Note that the webinar is being recorded, and so if you just be aware of that. Also, Christine's cat continues to want to try to attend. Christine is that Carol who's trying to attend our meeting today and learn about?
It is Carol today. She wants to be prepared for annual conference as well. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm not sure what her registration rate is, but we'll figure that piece out. So the other thing I wanted to let you all know today is that we have a good amount of time set aside today to provide some opportunity for you to give us both some feedback as well as just what are your questions. This is the 9th New Director Network webinar we've had over the course of 2024. We have only one left after this, which will be in December because we'll be seeing you at the conference in November. So we have some questions for you to make sure that we go forward with being able to support you all really well, providing what you need in the year to come. And so we will move into what we're working on today. So again, you've seen this slide just about every webinar that we've had. Just to remind you that the 3 branches of WSSDA are the support mechanism for all of you. We provide resources, support, training, events in all of these 3 different areas: policy and legal, strategic advocacy, and leadership development. And really, annual conference is the one that brings all 3 of these aspects together for all of you. So you'll be hearing from each of the branches, as well as a large number of other experts in the field that we think you'll find really valuable. For those of you who haven't had a chance to delve into what annual conference looks like, the conference takes place every year, the week before Thanksgiving. So yes, you have the week of Thanksgiving to recover from a fabulous annual conference each year. It does move back and forth across the state. We provide annual conference on the west side. It previously had been in Bellevue, although next year it will be in Seattle at a new, larger location to make better spaces for us. But this year it is November 21st through the 23rd. And it is in Spokane. It's held at the Spokane Convention Center and also in conjunction with the Davenport Grand Hotel. So we use both of those two facilities. They're connected by skywalk, so if it can sometimes be a little cold in November, it's a really easy way to get around once you're there. Um, this year's theme for annual conference is perspective. And not to overuse the word, but perspective itself can be looked at in several different perspectives. And we'll talk a little bit about how we're thinking about conference and how you might be thinking about attending and looking for what feeds you as a school board member as well. So um, really, just some background about WSSDA's annual conference. It is the largest gathering of education policymakers in the state. So you will see hundreds of school board members there, also superintendents from across the state. All of the leaders from the different education associations, from OSPI, from the educational service districts, from WASA, which supports school administrators, AWSP, which supports principals and school leaders. They all come to our conference to learn from and with you and from each other. And they bring a huge amount of both energy and excitement, as well as a lot of expertise to the conference itself. So those are some things to look forward to. Um, we will also, for those of you who are not registered, I'm curious if you all would put in the chat either a yes or a no for whether or not you are registered for the conference. I'm curious about who is. I think most of you are new school board members, but some of you may not be new and perhaps have attended before. It's really easy to get registered. The registration link is here. In some cases, you may have been registered by an administrator within your school district. So if you're wondering whether or not you've been registered, you can check with your superintendent, or perhaps your superintendent's assistant might be the person to check with there. So I've got a couple yeses. That's great to see. Wonderful. It's nice to see that so many of you are already registered. Um, I will tell you that for many of you, I also attended annual conference when I was first elected to my local school board member 19 years ago. I had no idea what to expect, and I was both overwhelmed and thrilled with with just the content, all the different ways that it helped me as a school board member. It both surprised and really encouraged me around all of the resources that were available through WSSDA, and also just the opportunity to meet other school directors from across the state. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of this conference is if you're wondering if another school district is doing something some way, chances are there are at least another couple of school board members at annual conference who can answer that question yes and tell you how that's working. So I really encourage you. It's one of I always felt before I worked at WSSDA, when I was a school director, that it was the best professional development I got as a school board member all year. Plus, it was fun, and it gave me an opportunity to get to know my own school board members better and the superintendent board team, as well as getting to know other people. So I've identified a couple of the ways that the conference helps new board members, really just learning from peers and from other educational experts. We talked a little bit about just that opportunity to connect with your board superintendent team. It's so hard to do that sometimes in your own district when you're subject to all of the open public meetings, um, restrictions, just the opportunity to develop relationships with each other and get to know each other a little bit better as people is a really great opportunity at annual conference. We have information on our webpage, so if you're wondering about, well, how does OPMA work for this, you can provide just a notification that indicates that your team will be traveling to and meeting at an annual conference. There is language on WSSDA's website. If you just go to our annual conference website, it will give you language for how to post a notification that you'll be attending the conference. There's a huge amount of content that's available, and we're going to go through the agenda a little bit. I'll walk you through that to help you understand what it is that you have available to you in just 3 short days. There are 70 breakout sessions alone. There are three different general sessions. One of them is a president's dinner, which is on Thursday night. It's a lovely event that celebrates leadership and provides you with a really nice dinner, time to chat and get to know each other. Keynote speakers, we have a couple of expert keynote speakers. One of them is Jeff Utek, who is an educational technology expert in the state of Washington. He's going to be speaking to us at the first general session. And then each year we invite the Washington State Teacher of the Year to speak to us at annual conference. And so we'll be joined on the last day by Blair Penry, who is the 2024 State Teacher of the Year. So we're excited to hear from her. There's also some specialized programming, and I'll go through that a little bit. There's some meetings and caucuses that might be interesting to you in terms of covering some specific needs or specific interests, and I'll walk through some of that as we go through the agenda. And then also for those of you who are interested in some onboard extended learning experiences, we have 5 of those that are offered at annual conference. You don't have to pre-register. They are included in your regular registration. So you can just show up early because it is first come, first serve. But we'll be offering 5 of those learning experiences. 3 of them will fulfill the required educational equity trainings that were required by the legislature. And then, that's funny, I'm seeing my mistake here on the screen. There are also finance trainings. Finance trainings are not required, but they really help not only new school board members, but any school board members really understand what are the financial pieces that you need to know as a school board member. And again, don't worry, those are not required. They are just really helpful for your role. So as I mentioned, there are 3 days full of learning and connecting. You can see here we've got some student performers on stage. That is one of the highlights of the conference, is there's just some phenomenal and really inspiring student performances that are a lot of fun. Also, we have a lot of student school board reps that come to the conference as well. In fact, we have well over 100 of them right now. So if your board has student reps, or if you just have some students who are involved with your team in one way or another, I would recommend that you consider having them come. So the agenda is listed here, and I am actually going to pop over to the agenda right now so that you can have a look at that, because I think that it is a really helpful way of understanding what that looks like. Let's see if I can get that. Oh, I'll get it here in just a minute. Heather, do you see any questions in the chat at all? Or are we?
Yes, I just answered one.
Oh, wonderful.
It was a question on required equity training. So I let them know that it's 2 trainings in your first 2 years as a board member, and then 1 training every term after that you serve.
Perfect. Thank you. And we will even cover that a little bit more here. So let me get you to the web page. So this is the agenda. The link was in the PowerPoint, but it's pretty easy. Just go to WSSDA and then go to training and events and pull down annual conference, and it will show you the agenda. I'm going to walk through this a bit just to give you some information on what to expect. Thursday, November 21st is what we have called pre-conference day in the past. I will say that we've opened this up to a full day of content and events now. So you will want to register separately for the pre-conference workshops, and I'll talk about those in just a moment. Those happen from 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock on Thursday, and I'll cover those 3 topics in just a minute here. So that's what's considered the pre-conference. We have 3 pre-conference workshops there, and then the general regular conference opens at 2:30. And then you'll see right away we have a breakout session at the 2:30 to 4 o'clock time frame, as well as open government training. And I'll talk about that as well. Open government training is something that is required of school board members within their first 90 days of service, or each, I should say, and each 4 years after that. So those are both available during that first breakout session slot. Um, at that same time, we start offering our onboard trainings. So you can see that the state foundations of state funding is here at 2:15. And then at 2:30 is the foundations of cultural proficiency. That's one of the three educational equity trainings that work towards fulfilling your requirement as a school board member. After that, we have squeezed in one more breakout session on the first day. Again, just want to emphasize these are part of your regular conference registration. So if you're not attending a pre-conference, these are still open and to you and very welcome to attend. The other thing you'll see here at this time frame is you'll see that we have the Equity and Access Caucus. So you'll see a number of caucuses and committee meetings as we go throughout this agenda today. And I'll point those out to you as we go through. A caucus is open to anyone who's interested in the content and wants to attend. They are generally centered around just having conversations around the topic that the caucus covers. Usually there's a committee that supports the facilitation of that. And so you're welcome if you're interested in seeing what that's all about to come. And then after that, after the breakout session and the caucus, that leads us into the President's Dinner. And it is in a beautiful ballroom at the Davenport Grand. Our staff knows that their food is outstanding because we got to have a tasting there again this summer. And I'll just give you one little hint. If you like lemon, you should have the lemon cake. You should just ask our graphic designer, Robbie. Yes, Christine agrees too. This dinner is just a wonderful time for you to soak up what you've learned throughout the day and come into the room, spend some time just with your colleagues at the table. We do a number of things. We have the Leadership WSSDA graduation that night. That's a group of school board members who've spent the entire year delving into some really deep and interesting conversations and learning around school boardsmanship. We also will recognize the 2024 Boards of Distinction that night, and you'll hear a number of folks sharing information and important topics with you, including WSSDA's President Sandy Hayes. And then you'll want to get to bed early because the next day, Friday, November 22nd, starts bright and early. And it starts, if you're interested in attending a committee or caucus meeting, we have a couple of them right at the 7:30 hour. So the large schools caucus and the most of you are probably not superintendents. Superintendents meet for the WASA breakfast. But if you are a school director for a large school caucus, or excuse me, for a large school district, you can attend that caucus. Breakfast is provided there in that meeting. For the rest of you who say, maybe I'll go to breakfast at 8, not at 7:30, that is available to you from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And it's a full breakfast. We give you a great breakfast to get you fueled for the rest of the day, each day. There is exhibits that are available, and they're open most of the day. And then we start our general session at 9:30. And you can see that we have our keynote speaker. We have a Board of the Year recognition. So from among those boards of distinction that were announced the night before, there will be one Board of the Year selected in each of the small, medium, and large categories. Also, the Superintendent of the Year will be acknowledged, and we have a number of other speakers that are going to be speaking over the course of that general session. After that, we feed you again. Time for lunch. Uh, there's lunch available to everyone. If you want to go to one of the committee or caucus meetings, there is the Trust Lands Advisory Committee that is meeting, as well as the School Directors of Color Caucus. And both of those are meeting over at the Davenport Grand. Again, if you're in the conference center, you just go up the stairs and across the Sky Bridge, and you're right there into the Davenport Grand. So it makes it easy, even if it might be snowing a little bit on us, which it does from time to time. After lunch, we go into breakout session number 3. There are between 10 and 13 options for breakout sessions during every session. So I would say the hardest part about the breakout sessions is deciding which one to attend. But you'll be able to direct all of your own learning. Sometimes there's a strategy among boards where board members will say, hey, let's all divide up and go to 5 different or 6 different breakout sessions. Other times, school board members might say, let's all go to this one together so that we can talk about it and learn at the same time. I wouldn't say either one of those is right or wrong. I think whatever works for you, and it might rely on the topic as well. Also, at the same time that those breakout sessions start, you'll notice that again, we have 2 different onboard learning experiences offered for you. So when you choose an onboard learning experience, you'll note that it does actually take up 2 breakout session timeframes, but it is 2.5 to 3 hours of really directed, deep learning around the topic that's offered. So the Discovering Educational Disparities is one of the educational equity trainings that's offered, and that meets your requirement for that. And then the Tackling Financial Soundness is an outstanding finance training that helps you really understand where your school district how your school district is doing and how to get that information. So we've had a lot of folks who've been on their board for a really long time say to us, wow, I really wish I would have gotten this training in the first couple of years. So this is your opportunity to engage in some of those. Then you can see we have 2 more breakout sessions from 3:15 to 4:15 and another at 4:30 to 5:30. And then that night is boards night out. So that's your opportunity to, if you're already registered for annual conference, probably you have already been talking about, hey, where are we all going to go to dinner tonight when we have that board night out. So that again is your opportunity as a board superintendent team to go out, have a meal together, have some conversation about what you learned, and just get to know each other a little bit better.
So
And
could
then,
I
yes, please go ahead, Heather.
Can I add just one thing, which is I'm also going through the breakout sessions right now, and it is overwhelming to pick which one. And so a tool I've used, or kind of a strategy, is looking at the strands. We have a few different strands that each of the content areas fall under. There's one on student engagement, there's another on student voice, there's another on governance. So that's a way I've organized where I might attend as well, to make sure I have a diverse kind of opportunity to learn in a bunch of the strands. So just wanted to name that, and that there is another question there in the chat, Trisha, which we could take at the end if you want, but just wanted to alert you.
Let's see, I'm just looking at it. Yeah, so I think there's a question around the School Directors of Color Caucus. So the WSSDA board, at the request of a group of school board members of color a couple of years ago, authorized a council, which is self-elected, and they presented a report to the WSSDA board that talked about the challenges of increasing diversity among school board members. And diversity can mean lots of different things, as you know, from working with your students. The School Directors of Color Council, their whole goal is to try to ensure that they are supporting and retaining diverse school board members. And they'll be talking about what issues can be helpful in terms of elevating lots of diverse boards. So they'll be speaking at the conference within that caucus, which I think you saw on the Friday schedule. We have a lot of different kind of interest-based. We also have a small schools committee that meets. We have the large schools committee that meets. We offer a lot of areas where if you have a particular interest or need, you can dive into that and really get involved. Another one of those is on the schedule for Saturday morning at 7:30. The Federal Relations Network is meeting bright and early in the morning. Again, that breakfast is provided there. The Federal Relations Network really looks at what can Washington state school directors do to influence and be a part of the federal decisions that are made around education. We know there are lots of Washington state decisions that are made in the legislature, but there are a lot of federal elements around education, particularly education funding. And so that group is, again, another group that really looks at some specific issues within education. Everyone else, if you opt not to go to that, we have breakfast again, conference registration, and then we start out that morning with our second general session. And that is when we give you the opportunity to hear from the Washington State Teacher of the Year, Blair Penry. There are a couple of other things that happen during that general session. There's also the installation of the 2024 actually, that should say 2025 WASDA officers. We're finding a couple typos here and there. This is very helpful. The Sandy Hayes will be rolling off of her year-long role as WASDA's president. Sandy's from the North Shore School District, and Derek Sarley, who is from the Walla Walla School District, is going to be beginning his tenure as the WASDA president at the end as he gets installed as an officer here. And then we have two more breakout sessions, one in the morning. And also there's a small schools luncheon that takes place, again, another interest-based group. So if you're from a small and or rural school district, you are invited to attend this. There's no pre-registration required for it, just come. There's a meal, we have a number of speakers. Um, some of you may know Jim Kolkowski from the Rural Education Center. He is one of the speakers, as well as a speaker who's going to be talking about how do you navigate politicization and tough conversations in small communities, really thinking about how are some of those needs unique in a small community and a small district. And then if you still have some energy, which we hope you will, there's one more educational equity training at the end of the day that is advancing inclusion through belonging. That is we've noticed one of our members' favorites. So we encourage you to attend that if you have the opportunity. There is lunch provided in there. And then for those of you who are not staying for that last breakout session, you are welcome to grab and go with your lunch. And the real diehards, we love to see who's still around at that last breakout session. And that's from 12:45 to 1:45. One thing I'll note about the schedule this year is we've packed more into the first day so that we can let you go a little bit earlier on Saturday because we know weekends are precious. So this gives you time to get back home on Saturday and still have all day Sunday to go. So I'm going to stop sharing this and pop back into our program. I don't see any questions. Do you in the chat, Heather or Christine?
No additional ones
Oh,
than the ones we've already talked through.
okay, perfect. So we will jump back into this. And again, we'll give you a chance to ask some questions live as we get to the end of this. So we went through the agenda pretty exhaustively. Hopefully that kind of gives you an overview of what to expect if you haven't been to the conference before. I'm going to put in a real plug for considering attending the pre-conference workshops. Some of you may have already attended boot camp. That may, in fact, even be why you're here today, because perhaps you found out about the new director network during the pre-conference workshop, during board boot camp. If you have not attended board boot camp and are new this year, I highly recommend that you attend it. It is 5 hours of training, includes lunch from 3 experienced school board members from across the state. And they really help give you an overview of what the role of a board member is, what board members do and don't do, and how to navigate your first couple of years as a new board member. If you have already taken that, I would encourage you to think about attending either the Strategic Advocacy Academy or the Law Conference. Both of those are for really any level. You'll see lots of veteran school board members there, but also if it's your first or second year and you've already taken board boot camp, I recommend one of these. Again, it's a really deep dive over the course of 5 hours. The Strategic Advocacy Academy is a whole lot of fun, led by our phenomenal Director of Strategic Advocacy, Marissa Rathbone. And she really teaches you how to Not be afraid of the word advocacy, but really find ways to engage not only with the legislature and the decision makers and lawmakers in our state, but even just advocating locally. How are you interacting with your community and with perhaps the business organizations or other groups within your community that you want to have be part of your school community? And then Law Conference is another outstanding opportunity for you to get a deep dive into what are a lot of the legal issues that impact you as a school board member or impact schools. So this helps you really understand a couple of issues that are related to your work and also give you an insight into what might be coming in 2025. And that law conference is led by WSSDA's Director of Policy and Legal, Christine Geary. So she'll be leading you into that. I know that we had that earlier comment about the Educational Equity Training Program. I want to speak to that for just a moment. This is in 2020, the legislature passed legislation requiring school board members um, to complete a number of educational equity trainings. They required WSDA to develop that training and curriculum and to provide it. So over the last number of years, we've spent a lot of time um, being really thoughtful about understanding the time constraints and challenges and overwhelm of busy school directors and how we could provide that training in a way that was specific to your role to help you better understand what educational equity looks like within your district because it looks different in every district. Really gaining some knowledge about what the topics are and how you can advocate for that in your own district and understanding what it means. So, as Heather mentioned, the requirements are that each new school director will take two of these five courses. And the choice is yours. They can be taken in any order. Take two of them within your first 2 years of service, and then you just need to take one more for every additional term that you serve. So for most of you, that's going to be every 4 years. So two to get started in the first 2 years, one every term after that is what the legislation requires. And then I'll just pop down quickly here. You can see these are the five topics within Educational Equity Program. These with the star on them are those that are offered at Annual Conference this year. So the Advancing Inclusion Through Belonging, the Foundations of Cultural Proficiency, and the Discovering Educational Disparities.
There was another question, if you are okay to take it.
I am. I just saw it. In fact, I just pulled that up. So it says our board and superintendent are intending to do board business at the WSSDA conference. How do we comply with OPMA? That's a great question. And so what I would say is that your superintendent would want to notice that to the public in exactly the same way that they would notice a board meeting. If you're actually having a regular business meeting, which sometimes folks do because it falls during that week that they're having regular meetings, you'll want to follow all of the regular requirements. In most cases, it's going to be recording that meeting, providing an option for public comment if it's a regular business meeting. You can do that remotely, obviously. And so just follow the regular rules around that. For the rest of the time, I would really recommend that you not talk a lot about making decisions or policy conversations during your time, but really use the time to talk about, what's the work that is most important to you as a school director, or what have you learned during the day, or getting to know each other personally, because often that's hard to do in your day to day. So hopefully that answered your question on that. So I'm going to now, at just over the halfway mark, I want to give you a little bit of time to provide some feedback to us. And I'm going to show you all three questions because I want you to take some time to think. You're welcome to type them into the chat box, or if you would like to unmute, raise your hand, and you can do that either with your real hand or with the hand that you find in Zoom, but these are the questions. So the first one is I'm really curious about what surprised you the most as a new school board member. And then the second question is, what are you still wondering about as a new school director? I'm certain you still have wonderings, because those wonderings, I think, continue just about every year you're on a school board. And then the third one is, what do you need to keep growing as a school director? So I'm going to pop it back to this first one. And again, I'd love to have anybody unmute and ask a question if they would like, or if you want to type it into the chat, you can. And I am looking into the chat right now. Um, so Heather said that what surprised her the most is the depth of knowledge we need and want to have. Absolutely, I will affirm that. I would agree that um, it's a little overwhelming. You get elected to a board thinking that you're going to do one thing, and then a lot of times that's not what you do. Or you do that plus about 14 other things or 100 other things. So I appreciate you sharing that. And give folks a little bit of wait time here. Love to have you pop into the chat. What surprised you the most over the last year? Or speak up and ask the question out loud if you want. We might have people eating lunch too. Oh, that's a good one from Renee. Renee says that the surprise is how quickly the year has gone. That's good. That's better than saying how long it's been. But I thought that too when I was putting together the webinar today, that it seems like just a few weeks ago we were putting together the first welcome to the new director network. Hopefully how quickly it has gone means that you've had a good year. Okay. Yeah, Nancy says the amount of time required to be informed and on top of things. Wow, Nancy, I really feel that. I completely agree with you. And I will tell you, while it is overwhelming as a new school board member, I think that's something that just continues because I found as a school board member every year, I needed to know something more or I needed to do something else. And it just compounded on itself. For me, again, that was one of the ways that I found WASDA really helpful because I could jump in and get some information on things that were needed. Renee, you turned on your camera. Did you have a question or a comment here?
No, I just realized if I was talking, I could do this.
You can,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hi.
Hi. It's great to have you and good to see that your year went quickly so far.
Yeah,
I
it has.
I think that's a good thing, right?
I do. Lots of people say, "How's it going?" And I say, "It's good." You bring the knowledge you have, you add a lot to it, you're figuring things out, you're making mistakes, you're new. So doing all the things.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
doing all of those things. And that's completely normal and just giving yourself a little grace for the things that you don't know. And maybe asking a little grace from others. I remember people would say, "How do you like being on the school board?" And I thought, like isn't the right word. It's not that it's not that it's
Right.
I don't like it, but just that it's so big and so interesting and so overwhelming and it feels really important because it is really important.
I think one of the interesting things to me is also how differently, I mean, of course, you're coming on a team, I expected everyone to bring something very different to
Mhm.
the board. I think one of the things um, I didn't really think about was how, even as you find your role in it, each person's looks very different. And so I think even though that seems so obvious now, I think it did come as a surprise to me that we would continue to have these very different views and very different contributions and priorities, and yet still working together to have one as a team. And the complexities of that um, are both good and challenging. So learning curve.
Yeah, that you just described all of that work beautifully. I really appreciate you taking time to share your experience there. It does take time, and it is interesting. As boards change too, you'll find that people who maybe had a special interest or a specialty in one area, those will
Right.
change as well. So
Right.
s- someone might be an accountant and be fascinated by the finances. That was always one person I wanted to have on our board.
Right. Okay. So I admit that's not my normal. I've been in advocacy for a while. And so I'm very focused on, policy and how what we're doing at the board level impacts what students experience. And of course, that comes with, things like, hey, we need funding. And so I'm used to all those conversations. I bring a lot of that. But now, and really hope to have somebody who's great with the finances, um, and understands it more. But no, I'm digging into that to understand it as much as I can too. So that's kind of unexpectedly becoming me as well. So
Thanks, Renee. I appreciate you sharing.
And I would just add, it's so lovely how the opportunity to learn something new is really surfaces as a board member, and that links to what somebody else just put in the chat, which is I'm extremely new to this and have no idea what I'm doing still, and I just feel like goodness, you're not alone there. There's both such a depth of things to learn and just even learning what you need to know, right? Learning what you need to learn is its own journey. So just want to honor that experience too, Jesse.
Yeah, and I would say too, just reiterating what Heather said, hang in there. And actually, if you're new and have no idea what you're doing, that's actually better than being new and being completely sure of what you're doing, but having that not actually be the right role. So, so you're in the right spot to be able to learn. Jesse, if you haven't attended board boot camp, I highly recommend that you do so. If you're not able to attend annual conference, board boot camp is available virtually on demand as well. But really, the annual conference is a great place for you to be to start. So just hang in there. You'll learn over time. It takes a long time. I really do believe that it takes a full first term before you really start to feel like you know what you're doing as a board member. And then Stephanie reiterated the amount of time required to get informed and be prepared for all of the meetings. And then, yes, the depth of knowledge that's needed as well. So I hear you. We feel that. Thank you all for sharing that. I'm going to go to the next question here, which is, what are you wondering about as a new school board member? You have WASDA's leadership development team here right now, ready to hear what you need from us in the coming year, or just what you're wondering about. What are some questions that you would like to know? Um, Worries, concerns, excitement? We'll give a little bit of time to see if anybody wants to either unmute. Welcome to turn your camera on and speak if you'd like. Drop it into the chat. I always wonder about in an election year, both at the state level and at the national level. I wonder how that's the results from both of those levels are going to impact school board work. There's a lot of work that gets decided at legislative levels, so it's always interesting and exciting. Let's use that word. um, So there is a question in here. I'm wondering how people handle requests for endorsements from people running for office. That is such a good question. Um, and what I'll tell you is that it really is your own personal decision. Um, and there are different types of people running for office too, right? Like, for example, there might be somebody running for your own board who has asked for your endorsement, or maybe there's someone at the local and state level who has asked for an endorsement. I'm going to give you my own personal philosophy. When I was a school board member, and even as a WSDA staff member as well, it may not be aligned with yours. So it's really your choice here. You do not lose your right to endorse someone, to speak your mind, your rights of free speech when you become a school board member. But what does happen is those sometimes have more consequences than when you are not an elected official. And so I would really carefully think through the consequences of endorsing someone. I never endorsed someone who was running for my own school board because you very well may be serving with the person who beat the person that you endorsed. And that does not, that's a really difficult position to be in. I certainly would encourage people as they were running, just, person to person, but I didn't endorse them because I felt like that would really be just a conflict of interest and could put me and our board, our whole board relationship, into a difficult position. I do think that in terms of endorsing candidates at a state level, again, you certainly can do so. I think you just want to run through in your mind, what are the potential consequences of that? If I do that, am I going to turn some people off? And again, you might decide that's okay. I also will remind you that Washington is one of the states where school board members serve in a nonpartisan role. So, in some states across the country, school board members do identify their political party. I'm really glad to be part of a state where we don't put our political party out there first, that we run as school board members who care about and are concerned about our local community schools. So, when you do make endorsements, just really think that one through and consider the potential consequences for you.
We had another question here
Yeah.
about an auditing committee.
Mm.
RCW states that we're required to have it. Nancy's wondering, so yeah, do we all have one?
I think, Nancy, what you're referring to is the auditing committee that's within your school district. I believe. I believe that's what you're referring to. And that, so I will just say right at the start here, I don't have a great deal of knowledge about that. It was something I'm happy to look up and share a little bit with you more. But I believe the RCW states that your board has to have an auditing committee. And if that's the case, your board may have some guidelines for committees. Like, for example, you might have one board representative that's selected for each committee, or your board may not have anyone on your committees. You may already know what the norm is in your district, or you could ask. The other thing is, you're mentioning here that this is part of an RCW, is that those RCWs are usually pretty prescriptive. So I suspect that RCW says very clearly that yes, a board member should be on it or would not be on it. Yeah, okay. And Nancy said that we started one with 2 board members. Great. So it sounds like you're all over it. You probably know more about this RCW than I do. So nicely done. Again, just a reminder to you all, you can't have 3 board members on a committee because then you have a quorum. And on that note, you need to be careful when you're in your role on committees as board members, because sometimes you can suggest something or ask a question, and all of a sudden everyone thinks, oh, this is what the school board believes. So good practices there are, things like, just as an individual, I'm wondering, and being really clear with your answers there. Okay, I think we've answered all of the questions that are currently in the chat. So I'm going to ask you one more. What do you need to keep growing as a school director? So we have lots of things planned for you in 2025. Heather, while people are answering this, do you want to speak just a little bit to some of our thinking around training in 2025?
Absolutely. First, just a plug for the member survey, and if some of you have already filled it out or not. It just came out this yesterday morning, I believe, in the member update, and it was also flagged a few weeks ago too. The goal here is to just get input from each of you about where and how you would best kind of whether you'd like virtual training and what sorts of trainings, and then what days, and then what days you'd like in-person trainings and which kinds of trainings. So it's really meant to get as much input as I can from the membership before we set up our schedule for next year. And we have some plans for a virtual kind of moment, an academy in the winter where consistently that you'll be having a chance for some virtual trainings in the wintertime, and then some in-person trainings in the summer, and then annual conference, of course, in the fall, so that we have really clear touch points where you have access to trainings. And then you also always have access to board boot camp at any point virtually, should you need that. So that's one thing we're looking ahead to. And we're also looking to really develop our messaging for some of the workshops that we offer individual boards. So there's a lot of wonderful opportunity to learn about the superintendent evaluation, to learn about strategic planning, to learning about boards and roles and responsibilities, all the different kind of lanes of a school board's work. So we send out consultants to work individually with your board. So we're also working to message some of those opportunities out so that boards are really getting the support that they need from our wonderful cadre of consultants and our trainers, and for both financial and equity trainings. Was that
Thank
help, Tricia, give a context?
That was perfect, Heather. Thanks so much. I knew you had a great answer for that. So,
Great.
we try really hard to provide our trainings and events in a variety of different ways too. We have some events that are just fully in person, like annual conference and our regional meetings that happen in the spring. We have a number of them that are offered only virtually, like this one, for example, is offered virtually over your lunch hour to hopefully align nicely with your schedule. And then we have a number that are offered in either both ways, or they're offered as a hybrid. So for example, some of you may have attended General Assembly in September. That was offered both in a virtual or an in-person option. And then the onboard trainings are a good example of trainings that can be offered either or. So we do offer them in person throughout the state on a regular basis, and then we also provide them fully virtually. So lots of different ways to engage with WSSDA. And I don't see any answers to this question, which means some of you are probably trying to finish your lunch before 1 o'clock. So I won't belabor that, although you're welcome to drop something else into the chat if you would like. And we're going to just go ahead and wrap this up in the last 5 minutes that we have here. Oh, I do see a chat in here. Let's see. What do we have?
And I'll just note as you're reading that, Tricia, I just put in a link to that survey I just mentioned that was sent out in the member update in case anyone wants to take that. Go ahead.
Yes, really recommend that you go in. This is your opportunity to tell us, to answer this question. What do you need to keep growing as a school director, and how does that help? Let's see. Oh, here's an interesting question. I'd like to know how to look into other board governance structures. We have coherent governance, but it is not supported by WSSDA. Well, I think I would maybe give a little caveat there that it's not that WSSDA does not support coherent governance. We really support boards with all kinds of different governance structures. So we work with lots of boards that have policy governance, coherent governance, and balanced budget, balanced governance, or kind of a hybrid between the more traditional governance structure and policy governance. So there have been in the past a number of breakout sessions on alternate governance structures, and I believe there is one again this year. I think there's one that looks at policy governance and also which includes a lot of coherent governance, includes a lot of the elements of policy governance. So, so Nancy, I'd encourage you. We again work with boards with all kinds of governance structures. We're happy to provide some specific supports if you need them. Yeah, and Judith says, I enjoy the trainings that we have with time to chat with other board members. I like hearing what other boards are doing. Yeah, me too. That's one of my favorite things about annual conference. I agree. So yes, okay. So Nancy came back and said the policies aren't updated by WSDA. That's absolutely true, and that is true for policy governance as well. Again, the reason behind both of those is that those are actually trademarked governance structures, and so specifically for policy governance, there are far fewer policies. But again, because those are trademarked and owned by corporations, they're the ones who provide the policies and not WSDA. We certainly work with board members though around, how do you navigate your board superintendent team within that? So I appreciate those questions and comments a lot. Okay, well, I think that we are going to maybe wrap this up for today. And one last thing I just wanted to mention to you, like I do every single webinar that we have, and that's that there are lots of other learning opportunities. Just go to wasda.org/events, and you'll see this great calendar, which you probably can't see at all right now in the small version that it's in. But every month we have a variety of trainings, events, webinars, meetings. So please make sure that you pop in here on a regular basis and take a look at what might be available to you. And then it's hard to believe we're at the end of 2024 almost, but we are. It's mid-October. So for the rest of 2024, we will see you at Annual Conference. We're not going to hold the New Director Network webinar, but we'll see you at the conference. Come up and say hello to us. Tell us, hey, we've been on your New Director Network webinar for this year. We'd love to see some of you in person and meet you. And then the last webinar of the year will be on December 17th. And wow, we ought to provide you some kind of a graduation ceremony or something, having gotten through your whole first year of New Director Network. So I think that wraps us up, unless Heather or Christine, you have anything else you want to share, or anyone has a question. I'll just pause for a moment.
I'll just say thanks so much for joining, and I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible at Annual Conference. I'm just 3 months in here at WSDA, so I'm really looking to meet new people. If you're new as a board member, you're not alone. I am too, so I'd love to connect.
Thanks, Heather. And then feel free to reach out to any of us. You can easily find our emails and phone numbers on the WSDA website. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll give you back about 30 seconds of your day now.
Oh,
So,
I have a question. This is
sure.
I just completed my first year as a new board member, and I was looking at the agenda. The pre-conferences, is that a requirement to be in attendance for those sessions?
I'm not sure what you mean a requirement to be in attendance. Like, is that required training? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
No, it's not. It's not required training. They're really they're conferences. Excuse me, they're sessions that are offered in addition to the regular conference. So you would register for the regular conference as well as the pre-conference. They're not required, but they just give that really that additional amount of time to really dive deeply into each of those three topics.
I see. Are they available like virtually on demand?
So the board boot camp is available virtually on demand, and you can find that right now on our website. So actually, if you just go to wasda.org and in the search bar type in board boot camp, it will show you the on-demand version of that. Law conference and strategic advocacy are not provided right now in a virtual format.
What about the open government training?
Open government training is actually one that is taught by the State Attorney General's office. And also, while you're on the WSDA website, you can also just actually go to the WSDA website and type in required training. And the options for the open government training will pop up. Really, what's offered is that we provide a space for the Attorney General's office to come in and teach that training at our annual conference. And then also the Attorney General's office provides the option for you to be able to take that online. And
Oh, I see.
It's just a click through. It's not any kind of a live version. Our board boot camp is actually recorded and filmed, so it gives you a variety of different, several hours worth of training. Open government training is pretty short and
Oh,
really
okay.
covers the Open Public Meetings Act and the Public Records Request. Sorry,
Okay.
records law.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope that was helpful. So. Okay, I don't see anything else here except goodbyes. So we'll say the same thing. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next month. Take care.